I'd like to welcome all councillors, officers and members of the public to this meeting of the council. Please switch your mobile phones to silent. There are members of the press and public attending this meeting virtually. Can I ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting? This meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. Reminders for councillors: to ensure that those attending virtually can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you wait for the microphone and speak clearly into the microphone. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors or officers by their first names. When addressing council, please stand if you are able to do so. There is no fire alarm planned this evening. Therefore, upon hearing a constant two-tone alarm, please leave the building via your nearest marked fire exit and make your way to the top of the car park. Please do not take time to pick up personal belongings and leave the building promptly. And we have apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Received apologies for absence councillors Davies, Denton, Youssef, Lovering, Spear, Stevenson and Hunt. Councillor Bullard is attending virtually, however not be able to take part in voting. Thank you, Chair.
2 items of business brought forward with my consent. The first one is, as Councillor Warden said, we sadly lost Kev Phillips over Christmas, and I'd like to take this opportunity to have a minute's silence to remember him.
Thank you, members.
The second item I have to bring forward is that the member satisfaction survey needs to be filled in by tomorrow. This forms part of the performance indicator, so we need those back. These declarations of interest.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors Caroline Lever, Crabb, Wiedemann, Broom and Maskell have declared other registrable interests as Devon County councillors in item 5 on the agenda, and they have sought and been granted a dispensation pursuant to section 33 of the Localism Act 2011 to continue to take part in the deliberation and vote on this item by the Governance Committee on the 7th of January 2025. Thank you, Chair.
Item 4, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There is no Part B. So Part A, Item 5, English Devolution White Paper and Local Government Reorganisation.
Just presentation that I was going to run through with members. So tonight, members, we're talking about local government reorganisation and devolution, and this follows the issue of the white paper.
Yeah, so this
follows the issue of the English devolution white paper issued on the 16th of September. The actual white paper itself covers devolution, it covers local government reorganisation, but it also covers other issues as well. But we're not going to be touching those tonight. But I just need you to be aware that it's broader than just devolution. But also,
I'm afraid that mic is going to be, it must have got a flat battery or something because it's very difficult to hear you. So.
all right, I'll speak later.
Yes.
So the white paper covers a whole range of different things. It covers devolution, local government reorganisation, but it also covers standards. It covers audit and the arrangements regarding audit. It covers workforce capacity, and it also covers things like remote working and voting. So all of those issues will be coming forward as part of the white paper at some stage or other, but we're not dealing with that tonight. What we're dealing with tonight is local government reorganisation and devolution. And that white paper, as I said on the slide there, it was issued just before Christmas alongside a whole raft of other documentation that came through in a very busy pre-Christmas period. So we had the proposed changes to the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework. We had the funding statement, and we also had towards the end of the pre-Christmas period our actual funding settlement, but also the consultation relating to changes to planning committees and a whole range of other things as well. So I'm mentioning that so that you can see that this is part of widespread reforms that are sweeping across local government. It's not just an isolated issue. This is making whole-scale changes to local government in the area nationally. Thanks, Bev. So just looking at devolution in particular, when we talk about devolution, what we're talking about is the devolving of powers from national government to local areas. And that oversimplifies it because what we're looking at is how those powers are held. And as I said on the slide, combined authorities, which we've got at the moment, are going to be called strategic authorities. And you'll be aware that the county combined authority that we have is just being set up within Devon and Torbay, the Devon and Torbay CCA. That's going to be known as a foundation strategic authority. But the government's ambition set out in the white paper is that the whole country will be covered by new strategic authorities, and that each of those will eventually have mayoral arrangements underpinning them. There will be new powers, and some of those powers are set out in the white paper, which will be given to strategic authorities. But it's fair to say that in the same way that when the county combined authority was set up, there were a suite of powers that could be given to the area if mayoral arrangements were adopted, and less powers if other models were adopted. That's exactly the same in the white paper. So if you go for a mayoral arrangement, then you get more extensive powers and more funding. So I've said there that new powers will be given to those strategic authorities, and it's the wish of government that devolution becomes the default position. And what government has been set budgets for devolved areas, so it reduces that sort of time-consuming process that we go through now, where we bid into different funds each time. Government has set some criteria for what a strategic authority will look like. And the most important one, I guess, is that they will have populations of at least 1.5 million people. So that's bigger than any county in our area. And as I'll come on to and talk about in a second, what's being discussed locally is that strategic authority was made up of Cornwall, Devon, Plymouth and Torbay administrative areas. And sitting above there will then be a mayoral arrangement, an elected mayor. The other criteria the government has set out, they've said that there has to be sensible economic geographies. They talk about focusing on the economic areas, looking at the travel to work areas, the labour market, etc. So they're looking at sort of natural fits across the area. But what it is talking about and does say is that where you have to bring in lots of authority areas or multiple authority areas, then you can look at multiple travel to work areas as well. They also say that there shouldn't be any devolution islands. That means that in setting the arrangements across an area, you shouldn't leave out small pockets of land or small pockets of your area which couldn't sustain themselves on their own as a unitary. So you need to wrap up those areas. So, for instance, Plymouth or Torbay, for instance, as a smaller area, couldn't be left out of any current arrangements. It also talks about geography being capable of delivering key strategies. That should be, sorry, not strategic. And what the white paper talks about is that each area will have a duty to issue a local transport plan and also to prepare what's going to be called a spatial development strategy. So those high-level strategies will be developed by the strategic authorities. So the geography that you pick has to naturally fit with those strategies as well. There's an ambition over a period of time to align boundaries so that the other public sector organisations' boundaries align with these organisation boundaries as well. And if you look at across Devon, Cornwall, Plymouth, Torbay, you've also got the boundaries for the PCB, for instance, but there's also talk about aligning with NHS boundaries as a good example, and also Job Centre Plus boundaries. So the idea is to try and simplify the public sector as a whole, not just local government. And also mustn't forget about strong local identity. The white paper talks about that. What it's saying is that the strategic authority should be recognisable by the population. The population should be able to hold strategic authority and the mayor to account, and therefore that strong local identity is an important element of it as well. Thank you, Beth. The white paper talks about powers. I mentioned that just now. New powers come into the strategic authority. The existing foundation strategic authority, that's our CCA, the powers will remain largely unchanged. That authority will become known as a foundation strategic authority, but its powers won't be increased but significantly as a result of the white paper. There will be a couple of additions, but pretty much largely it'll remain as is. But any new mayoral arrangements and mayoral strategic authorities will receive more powers and will receive greater investment as well. So I talked about the spatial strategy. Government is saying that the mayoral arrangements and the strategic authorities will have strategic development management powers in the same way that the Mayor of London has, London Mayor. London Mayor can call in planning applications. There's talk about the elected mayors in these arrangements also having similar powers. They will have powers in relation to regeneration and housing delivery. And the white paper talks about mayoral arrangements being integral to the targets to deliver 1.5 million houses across the country. They will, as I said before, have the responsibility to develop spatial development strategies, and they will also have new development management powers as well. There'll be powers regarding culture, heritage and sport spending, and the idea being that there'll be some further reviews taking place centrally on arm's length cultural organisations such as the Arts Council, to make sure that funding delivered through the Arts Council can be fed into mayoral arrangements and strategic authorities. Skills, that there's a further white paper that came out a couple of weeks before this one, the Get Britain Working white paper that talks about adult skills. There'll be a whole heap of issues coming through from that white paper that will be devolved to the strategic authority as well. They'll have powers in relation to green jobs and skills, net zero. There'll be a role to play for the strategic authority in the energy system and retrofit funding. And also there'll be a new power or new duty, on the strategic authority around health improvement as well. So there's an extensive suite of powers that are there, ready to be devolved down to the strategic authority when it's set up. So, so that deals with devolution. Now, sitting below devolution is local government reorganisation. And I've just put a couple of quotes up there, or one quote from the white paper. What underpins local government reorganisation is the belief that unitary councils can lead to better outcomes for residents, save significant money which can be reinvested in public services, and improve accountability with fewer politicians who are more able to focus on delivering for residents. That's taken directly from the introduction to the white paper, is referred to a couple of times throughout the white paper. In effect, government want less leaders to deal with, and they think that less politicians makes a more accountable local government. The evidence set out in the white paper is based on a PricewaterhouseCoopers report that was issued in 2020, which talked about single unitary areas potentially making savings of, I think it was £3 billion nationally. That was a report that was commissioned by the County Councils Network. And the white paper draws in a number of areas on the findings of that report. The white paper talks about facilitating a programme of local government reorganisation for two-tier areas, makes it clear that county councils in their current form and district councils in their current form will not exist. New authorities will be set up, new unitary authorities will be set up, and it talks about a phased approach, but the white paper itself talks about that happening over this Parliament and the next Parliament. But I'll come on to, in a second, subsequent letters and webinars which have made it quite clear that that programme is going to be advanced before the end of the next Parliament. The only criteria that's been set so far in relation to local government reorganisation is that each unitary authority that comes into being should have a population of at least 500,000. Although government has said that they will look at smaller population areas if there's the justification for doing so. And at the moment, no other criteria has been set. The white paper also talks about an expectation that all councils in an area will work together to develop the plans, and that those plans be within the interests of all of the whole area. So not just North Devon, for instance, but looking at Devon as a whole. And ideally, they don't want competing proposals. So their aim is to ensure that over the next few months, all of the authorities sit down together and try and come up with a combined response. They want the transition to be as swift as possible. And the letter, which I'll refer to in a second, talks about a devolution priority programme. That would fast track some devolution deals and some local government reorganisations. But in effect, the timetable is going to be pretty swift anyway. So it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. Government has talked about support being provided to those areas that are making the transition. And has talked specifically, and I'll put it in bold because that's what we're going to refer to in a second, talked specifically about the possibility of postponing county council elections in order to help that transition. So subsequent to, or at the same time as the white paper was issued, all authorities in two-tier areas and in neighbouring smaller unitaries, so Torbay, for instance, Plymouth, etc., received a letter from the Minister which set out that in January there will be a formal invitation given to all councils within affected areas, asking them to submit proposals for local government reorganisation for the creation of those unitary authorities, with further detail to then be set out in the interim arrangements. The idea is that those arrangements will be submitted to government by March this year, and then further detail, fleshed out arrangements will be submitted to government either in May or October, depending on whether the authority area is on the priority programme or not. The letter itself talks about that priority programme, and it says that where there are plans in place, where the area is ready to come together, around a plan and wants to move ahead quickly, then you can apply to go on the priority programme. And if that's the case, then government are looking to introduce the new arrangements in April 27, with shadow arrangements apparently from April 26. So areas that wish to join that priority programme can apply to postpone the May elections, but the application has to be in by tomorrow, the 10th of January. And that's what everybody is focused on at the moment, is whether the elections are postponed or not. Thanks, Bill. So further information that's come subsequent to the letter in the white paper, we've had a number of webinars. So the first point there is that district councils, well, they can object to a proposal to delay an election, but what government have made clear is that they're not really going to take or give much weight to district councils' views on that. They will listen to the strategic or the current authorities that would make up a strategic authority. But in relation to district views, we don't have a veto over whether elections should take place or whether they should be postponed. The proposal to delay the election has to be supported by the upper tier authorities that will form the strategic authority, and the go live dates for new arrangements are April 27 if you're on that fast track programme, if you're on the speedy process, or April 28 if you're not. And those are the current timetables that are being put around at the moment. But please bear in mind that the white paper talks about within this parliament or the next. So in theory, at least, those timetables will slip. But that's what government are talking to us about at the moment. So the current position, and it has been changing, as you can imagine, over the course of the last week or so. Devon County Council met this morning, and I'm paraphrasing the resolution, but they resolved to write to government asking for the postponement of the elections. There was an amendment that was put forward, and I know some of the members here tonight were there, so they probably know more than I do. But there was an amendment that was put forward that was in effect to work with districts and other authorities, I think, and other partners to come up with a solution for local government reorganisation. But the main thrust of the motion that was passed today was to seek the consent of government to postpone the county elections in May, and to effectively be put on that priority programme. There was a bit of discussion about it, but there was no motion come forward to suggest what that local government reorganisation may look like. We have the statement that the County Council issued a couple of weeks ago, which said that their preferred outcome was a single unitary covering Devon and Torbay, but that wasn't part of any resolution today. The only resolution was to postpone the election. And I think that was in recognition of the fact that in January, at some stage, we're going to get that letter from government saying, come up with your proposals. This is the criteria that you should take into account. So we're all waiting for that letter before we can start thinking about where boundaries should sit, etc. And I'd suggest that in tonight's meeting, we don't focus on that necessarily, because we don't know what those criteria are going to be. And there's going to have to be an awful lot of discussion between the authorities to try and come up with a suitable plan. If there was a single Devon and Torbay unitary, the population would be 970,000 approximately. So well above 500,000 suggested figure by government. So in response to that statement that was issued by Devon County Council, districts, the leaders issued their own statement back end of last week, which indicated that they didn't support the postponement of the election, albeit each district still had to meet at that stage. And they also didn't support the creation of a Devon and Torbay single unitary. But as I said, what's become clear since the issue of that statement is that the county didn't put that in as part of their resolution. What's also happened today is that Plymouth have met, and Plymouth have resolved to support the creation of that strategic authority, the Devon, Cornwall, Plymouth, Torbay model. and support the mayoral arrangements that would sit with it. And they've also suggested that in relation to local government reorganisation, the boundaries of Plymouth should be expanded to enable growth and to enable economic development, etc. What's also happening this evening is that meetings are taking place in other districts. So I think Torridge are meeting tonight, Teignbridge are, I believe, East Devon are, and Exeter are. There may be some others meeting tonight as well. Mid Devon met last night, I think it was, and West Devon met on Monday. And what the districts are trying to do is coalesce behind a joint statement and a joint letter, the draft of which came out to members earlier, which we can go through shortly, which effectively says that we don't agree to a postponement of the elections. We don't agree to a single unitary, but we will all work together to try and come up with a solution for unitary status. The other thing that I should mention in relation to Exeter, obviously subject to any decisions being taken tonight of their authority, but their report suggests that they will be submitting a letter that is looking for an Exeter-centric unitary to be created. And it alludes to the fact that there may be an expansion of Exeter's boundaries as part of that. So that's where we are at the moment. Come on to the so the resolutions, and these are only suggested resolutions, members. This is something for you guys to discuss and kick around. But the suggested resolution is that District Council write to government indicating support for devolution generally. It's going to happen. So we need to embrace it, I would suggest. Indicating opposition to the postponement of county elections, opposition to the creation of a single Devon and Torbay unitary, although we accept that that's not something that's being proposed at the moment. And obviously support for working together with other councils and partners to come up with a locally agreed solution. And the reasons that I'd suggest for those recommendations are set out on these two slides. So greater power, which is held locally, has to be welcomed, I think. That's what devolution is all about. But that postponing the elections should really only be carried out in exceptional circumstances. There is a democratic right to elections, etc. And there is a suggestion that it denies the public of that democratic right. And in any case, is there really any urgency to agree a devolution deal in Devon when we're talking about a difference of a year, perhaps? And when we're talking about an area where we've already got a devolution deal put in place, which hasn't yet been put in place, is being implemented in the course of the next couple of months. And similarly, there is no clear plan for reorganisation that could be delivered at pace. And I think that's demonstrated by the fact that Plymouth have certainly resolved today that they want to see an expansion of their boundaries. That's not a simple task. And that's something that perhaps I would suggest can't be pushed through very quickly. There is a suggestion that the unitary authority of 970 is too large to be in the interest of the best interest of the area, but that's a matter for you guys to think about. And the last reasons I'd suggest are that a better plan for unitary solutions across Devon and Torbay and Plymouth could be achieved with all the partners sitting down together and coming up with a better solution. And I think that needs that extra bit of time and opportunity to actually deliver that. And the last slide, I think, is just the map that you'll be familiar with, which just shows the districts, shows Plymouth and Torbay and Cornwall and the population levels taken from the last survey, the last census in 2021 for your information. And that's it.
I'd like to ask Councillor Clayton if he wants to add to what Ken has said.
Well, no, what I said before, as far as this is concerned, we've got to be realistic. There is going to be this strategic authority no doubt. There are going to be the unitaries and sorry, yeah.
Better now. We have to be realistic. There is going to be a strategic authority. there are going to be these unitaries. And I think it's up to us now to be proactive and come up with ideas and proposals for what we think it would be in the best interest of Devon residents, proposals for a unitary. I think we need to keep what we send to the government as simple as possible. We pause the postponement of the county council elections. I don't know why Devon County Council has pulled back. Maybe somebody who's meeting today can tell us why they pulled back from trying to get government to agree to listing authority, because I thought that's what they were going to propose alongside the proposal. Because it wasn't in the motion that they passed. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, but the whole thing is just to have this overall strategic authority. Nothing else. Nobody has agreed anything about what's going to happen underneath.
That's right, but initially, you were going to the Devon County leader.
Third option. It's not. That wasn't done on today's motion at all. Never was.
That's what came through from the Devon County leader when he addressed districts.
That's his personal opinion. He made that.
Okay then. So we do know that's the situation now. My view is that we should oppose that, and we should be looking for these unitaries, perhaps two, but then it's up to us to decide what is best for us in North Devon. Or is that enough? I'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks. Okay, so who would like to speak on this? Everybody's looking a bit stunned at the moment.
Would you mind just checking everybody can hear?
Yeah, can everybody hear who's online?
Give us a wave.
Give us a wave or a thumbs up or something, please.
I've got some say.
Right. Okay, so can we, as the online people cannot hear the audience, then we need to make sure that the microphone is used and that people stand up. Okay? Right, so Councillor Howard Booth.
Thank you, Chair. When I was looking, sorry.
Thanks. When I was looking at the map, I really wanted to see overlaid on it the NHS boundaries that affect us. They are, as Ben pointed out, an important factor in this.
Well, as I've said, Chair, tonight isn't around setting boundaries for any new unitaries. But what I'd be suggesting, and what the leader has suggested, is that a working group of members be created to start looking at some of the detail regarding boundaries, regarding population levels, etc. And that's certainly some of the information that we can provide that working group. But for tonight's purpose, as I said, I wouldn't suggest starting to think about those boundaries at the moment, because we're in the same position as the county council, as every other district. We're waiting for that criteria to come through from government in January with the invitation to start looking at that. And until we see that criteria, I suggest it's a little bit dangerous to start thinking about and, taking steps to actually set a boundary. But that information can certainly be part of the working group's consideration. Yeah.
Councillor Crowe.
Chair, could you ask again? Because I'm getting messages coming through that.
Thank you, Chair.
Hold on, sorry, can you hold on 1 minute? Those attending virtually, can you hear everybody, including myself and Ken?
Could someone speak?
Yeah.
Hello, good evening and welcome.
So Ken is really clear. It's really difficult to hear the members.
Right.
Yeah. I'm up in a week. I'm back. I believe I just wanted to make the point, and it was picked up on, some of what Ken's presented, and it's in the leader's letter, in about this thing about we're all going to be lovely and fluffy, we're all going to work together, and we're going to end up with Devon, these wonderful two authorities that are the right side. Play cuckoo land. It's not happening. I don't know about how you feel about gossip and innuendo, but I've spoken to Ken about this the other day. So, and you must have heard all this as well. The fact that Plymouth has got a back channel open to the government, and they've been allowed to, if they can get up to 350, they'll qualify. So they're going to take South Hams. That's gone. Exeter's done the same with East Devon. That's gone. So end up now, the capital of Devon can be Barnstable. That's about it. That was big. There's Leto Campton's bigger, but it didn't, is it? That's it. So this whole thing, I don't know. Right. I don't think it's as clear cut as that, and there's lots going on, and everyone's pretending, oh, we don't know nothing about it, but they do. There we go.
Councillor Peter Lever, could you come to the front, please?
There's something sounding that. There was a perfect comment on that.
Yeah, so I've got the chat up.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, for once, I agree with Councillor Crabb that there are clearly discussions going on with government, with some of the authorities in Devon, but that surely means that there's even more reason to hold up these elections in May, so that there's a proper up-to-date mandate from the people of Devon to government, and there's a group of councillors who feel they've got that mandate to go into discussions with government robustly and strongly.
Yeah. Chairman, I've been the sort of bridesmaid that's gone to the altar 2 or 3 times on local government reorganisation. One thing I do know is that every time we made assumptions at the beginning of the process, what came out the other end was completely different. Yeah, true. And hence we ended up with Torbay coming out of Devon, where it was not even an option that was being consulted on. So what I'm saying is that we need to have a bit of time. We need to look at the interests of communities here. Devon is not one community. It doesn't make sense to me as one community. I'm a Devonian, but I'm a North Devonian first and foremost. And I want the opportunity to sit down with colleagues across the rest of Devon to see if there is a solution that will look after what our special economy here in the north. Our housing market is different. There's lots and lots of reasons why we need to have that debate rather than just being steamrolled. This government may well, and I think what Paul Crabb is saying is right, Exeter and Plymouth will have the ear of government. And that's why the county are panicking and trying to push through by stopping the elections now. But let's have a proper debate. Exeter is really important to the economy of Devon as a whole. And we need to sit down with Exeter as well as the rural districts, and see if we can come up with some ideas and some solutions. But whatever you think now is setting in stone will not be the outcome, and I can assure you that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always write in my diary the days that I agree with Councillor Crabb. He put a very good point today. My point really was with regards to postponing the election. We postponed it for COVID. That was a good reason to postpone it. The county council did run for 5 years. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Councillors, as I know Braunton East councillors are feeling at the moment, we are ageing and we do struggle more than we do. The county councillors we have been going for some time and doing an excellent job. And I know the North Devon councillors are very vibrant and vital people, but there are people who have won general elections in the last year who do need to step down as the election comes up. And I think they're all expecting to. We have councillors there who won't be able to take as much part as possible, and councillors who would be looking to retire this year who might not want to go on for another year. It's time to have that general election now. We also, the county councillors we have, there has been a change in...
I agree with Councillor Bell. There we are.
I said vibrant and vital, I think, for the North Devon, although I haven't met several. I've realised that there's a lot of county councillors I haven't met in North Devon, but the ones that I know, vibrant and vital. Also, we haven't got a mandate. There has been a political change over the last year. Things have moved in a different direction recently, for better or worse, but we do need to ensure that the county councillors we have a mandate for what we're going to be doing moving forwards. We don't want to have the county councillors do or don't want to have the county councillors. We want to know that they have been selected for this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
I'd just like to clear what I said earlier, just to make sure. What I was saying is be careful.
Sorry.
The point I was making is that if or what's been presented as part of a briefing, so you are now all going to be aware of this, is the fact that if Plymouth carves off in one direction, Exeter carves off in another, and what's left is, what was it, a devolution island or whatever, something like that. So that's what happens if you sit on your backside and do nothing. And that's what's been presented to us. So the thing is, you want to get in there and be part of the conversation. And that was the only reason, well, that's the driving force really about trying to get involved in this mayoral thing. so that it's not done to us, that you're actually part of the process, which kind of agrees with what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the reasoning put forward by at the county council meeting today was let's postpone the elections and crack on with it as quickly as possible, so that we are part of that conversation. That was the gist of what I heard. Other councillors may feel different, obviously.
Councillor Caroline Lever.
Thank you. So, because I was at the county council meeting this morning.
Speak up.
Sorry?
Speak up. Speak up.
Sorry, speak up, me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Sorry if I'm too quiet.
It's for people online.
Oh, sorry if I'm too quiet. Okay, so I think it's been really helpful to hear Ken sort of give an overview about what the white paper says. And I think that there are certainly and I think it's really easy for it to be quite confused, because it's quite a lot of changes that are coming to the way local government is going to be delivered and governed across England. And particularly for two-tier areas that we are in, you know, county and district. There's no doubt about that. There's I think some of the commentary that is out there, not in here, but out there, confuses those two things. So I think it's really helpful if we're clear that we're talking I feel I'm just repeating Ken's words, but less eloquently. That we're talking about a strategic authority, which is supposed to be about 1.5 million, which takes over the role of the with a mayor that will take over the role of the police and crime commissioner and various others, but there's more detail out there. But the idea is that that's a really quite big strategic sort of authority that doesn't meddle too much at a local level, but does that big strategic stuff. Transport is going to be a massive one. Housing allocation, strategic planning type things are going to be all part of that. And then below that, what we're looking at is no more districts and no more county, and all of the functions of both of that level of government going into unitary authorities. So there's a real challenge for councillors, because as district councillors, you know all about district council stuff. You know, people who are county councillors know all about county council. We know more about children's services and Ofsted visits than probably any of us want to know about. But you know, actually, that's one of the things which is the business of counties. All those will come together. Now, one of the things for us to think about is that those services will need delivering, irrelevant of the shape of local government. People are still going to need potholes mending. They're still going to need their kids in care to be looked after and to be safe. They're still going to need planning applications to be determined. There's still going to need to be for local plans. All of the things that all of our councils do are going to have to continue to be delivered. And I think that what we're being asked to do is, rather than rushing headlong into the first phase of devolution to go to a strategic authority, is to be a bit more thoughtful about it. And unitaries, they are coming, and it just depends on the shape, and we need to be thoughtful about it. And as has been suggested by others, thinking about all the ways in which North Devon can either benefit or not benefit. I think as far as staff go, pretty tough, but there are still going to need to be people who look after committees. There will still need to be planners. There will still be people doing finance. You know, there's a whole bunch of people, but it's pretty frightening actually for people. So we've got to try to get the best for our communities, who of course we have all been elected to serve, but also we have to think about the staff and the way in which services are delivered in a way which works and works well. Complex stuff, my goodness me. Now, one of the things in the letter from the minister that accompanied or came to leaders and chief execs was very clear that if you already had a number of authorities that have worked together and they've developed plans and they're ready to go, right, that's it, for a strategic authority, those are the organisations, those are the areas that they will be seeking to come into the devolution priority programme. We're not in that state here because as well as Devon, as well as Plymouth and Exeter wanting to do their own thing a bit, Cornwall has been absolutely clear that it wants to be different. It wants to be special. It's got some kind of protection, which people with Cornish connections, I'm sure, can tell me what it is. So we're not in a position where we've got councils in agreement. So, excuse me, it would make no sense to say, yeah, we can go. We're ready. We're not. We're just simply not. But I think that we do know the kind of things, broadly speaking, that are going to be considerations. We know broadly what local authorities deliver, and they're going to continue to deliver. Conversations have been taking place, I know, at chief exec level and at council leader level. There will be many, many more discussions, and whatever we end up with, those discussions are going to have to take place anyway. And it's a good thing that those discussions will take place. As far as trying to put off elections, I mean, it's not elections to this council, it's elections to the opposite, the county council. All I can say is that the people of Devon actually should not have elections taken away from them. Democracy denied. We have been, as county councillors, and I will be up and I might lose my seat, you know, which would be fair enough. But we have been elected for a certain period of time, bless you, to do the things that the county council do and to represent our communities there. And the idea that because actually what was said at the county council meeting today was that one of the reasons that they thought it was a great idea to put off the elections is that new councillors may not be able to cope with the complexity. Absolutely shocking stuff. So I will actually be voting completely in favour of the proposals which have been put forward, and I would ask others to join me in that and to be looking after the best interests, not only just of the people of North Devon, but hopefully the staff, but also to not deny democracy and to steal an election from them. Yeah. Councillor Crenshaw.
Yeah, I spoke at the governance committee. About my worries about democracy being taken away from the people. And I think that this is perhaps somewhat motivated by people who don't think they'll win their seat again. So they're trying to hold on to their power for a little bit longer. But this is the time when you should have you should have an election by way of a referendum, say, in a similar way. So you can then say, this is what I see for devolution, and the people can vote for their candidates and what they believe in. This seems yet again like another demonstration of county acting in haste and then probably not repenting. So I think that the recommendation on the table is the best way forward. I also agree with Councillor Clayton, our leader, that we should have a working group on this. So if you need a proposal, I'm happy to propose or second both of those options.
Councillor Jones, please.
I just want to say the things that we've all been saying, but nobody's put on record, which is nobody's actually asked for this. Communities aren't asking for this. And I'm working at the moment, working really closely, as we've got lots of new social housing I'm with, which I'm working really closely, speaking with a lot of people. And I'm on the ground, I'm able to support those people really closely. Local councillors are able to understand the local issues. They're able to really serve the local communities, and they really care for the local community. What we're talking about doing here is actually moving those pointless politicians, as the government is saying, further away from the people. So those that are most vulnerable, those that are most need, those that are calling us and contacting us, who are they going to reach out to? They're going to have the equivalent of a county councillor and a unitary councillor. It's going to have a much bigger area. They're not going to have as much of an understanding of those smaller communities. they're not going to understand the dynamics. They're not going to know the people. They're not going to be able to serve those communities as effectively. The reality is that district councils work really hard. And in my short time as a councillor, I've seen how the councillors and the officers really, really do push to do the absolute best they can to serve the area. And North Devon is served so well through all the different services. In reality, they're very, very efficiently run. And we know that when we look at county, that's just not the case. The challenges for county are very different. The burdens are so much greater. You have to think about all of the different things that they have to do. It means that funds that are needed for vital services get lost on those bigger duties. And I think having districts really does protect those communities and protects local communities and those that are most vulnerable. We're not going to be better served. Our communities are not being asked for this. And what's really, really shocking is nobody's going to get to actually comment on this. This is going to happen. We're not going to have a decision. Nobody's going to be making a vote. Nobody's going to be saying, I agree with this or I don't agree with this. And I find that quite shocking. Why are we not doing that? Why, when the election came, did we know what we were agreeing to? No, we didn't know what we were agreeing to. And I think I personally am quite shocked by the fact that this is happening. It's going to happen so fast. And I think it's really, we're lucky. We've got some really experienced councillors in North Devon. I think we need to have this group that's going to be looking at all the different options, negotiating really carefully with all the other group leaders. But the reality is this is being pushed upon us. And if you don't have a say, I don't think it's entirely fair.
Quick second bite, if that's okay. More a question for Ken, if that's okay, who I hope will be the mayor of Devon and Cornwall soon. He said the government isn't going to listen to district councillors, which makes this meeting great. Every district council, I think, in Devon is pretty much saying the same thing as we are. Are they really not going to listen to every single district council? I know Devon County has put forward one proposal. They are a collegiate group and they are very sensible in many ways, some ways. But are they not going to listen to us at all? I mean, or do you think actually this weight of opinion that seems to be coming from the district councils is going to make a difference?
Which party do you represent?
If I can just clarify, not the mayoral bit, but when I said that MHCOG had said that they wouldn't take into account the views of the district council, that was purely and simply on whether the election should be postponed or not. And they were quite open about that and quite clear about that on the webinar. In terms of proposals for local government reorganisation, there has been no indication that districts will not be heard and will not be considered as part of that. You're right that the set of propositions that are coming before you tonight, if you accept them, they will be very similar to what other district councils are saying. As I said, Exeter are saying something slightly different because they're looking at a unitary Exeter. But I think all of the districts, subject to what decisions are taken tonight in those other areas, will be saying that they don't agree with the postponement of the elections and that they don't agree with a single Devon and Torbay unitary, and that they wish to work together with the county council to try and draw up a better solution. That's the central plank of most of the resolutions that are going tonight that I'm aware of. But just to reiterate, government haven't said that they will not listen to districts full stop. It was purely on the point about whether the elections are postponed or not. And they've been quite clear that the determining factor is whether those authorities that will form part of the strategic authority agree to the postponement of the elections. So that's Devon, Cornwall, Torbay, Plymouth.
That's the Maskell.
Gone to sleep. So I obviously am a county councillor and I was there today. And there was a really good point made, I think, by one of the Liberal Democrats, I'm not sure, said that we from being Team Devon to a version of Hunger Games where we're all out fighting each other, stabbing each other in the back. And I thought actually that was a really good analogy because overnight that's what this proposal has done to a lot of us. You know, we're all, and one thing that struck me today was during all those discussions on both sides was that we weren't bitching or having a go about our district council colleague. And I think that there's been some quite disingenuous comments here tonight about the county council and county councillors and motives for postponing the election. Officers at the county council are concerned that if we are involved in conversations in the next few months, then, you know, they're going to struggle. There's a huge amount of people coming up for retirement who are not going to be standing again. There's going to be a big turnover. Whatever the political balance, it's going to be quite hard on those officers. And I'm sure that you guys would probably feel the same if it was a district council election coming up. That
So you're talking about officers or councillors?
well, officers as well. I think the officers
are up for election.
Can we come through the chair?
I'm so sorry, Chair.
I'm not saying the officers are telling us we can't have an election, but I think from some of the councillors' point of view, the thought of the officers working, you know, it took me, I would say, only in the last 18 months to really understand the full functions of county and my role in that. And I'm still learning at district. So, you know, it's quite a big thing to become a councillor when you haven't done it before. And the thought of a huge amount of new people, I think that was the motive behind a lot of it. And I think it's really disingenuous to say it's for political motives. So I want to work with both the councils I represent, and I want to work for the people of North Devon and for Devon. And, you know, I think we all need to just bear in mind that it's not a case of us and them. We're all going to be out of work if we're not careful, you know. So just that's my point. And it's not one against the other. Thank you.
Councillor Wardle, please.
Yeah. A lot of what I was going to say, Councillor Jones actually said. I thought it was extremely important what you actually relayed to us, because in a sense, we do need local government reorganisation. As a founder member of this council, we've been going a long time as district councils, and perhaps it is the right time now to have a review of what is actually happening, particularly as, for example, the county council has great difficulty with potholes and things like that because they haven't got sufficient money. But I didn't like the idea that this was the motive behind all of this was to save significant money, which you put up on the screen at one particular point, because there isn't enough money in local government as it is to provide all the services properly. And if the motive of the government is simply to save money, it doesn't augur very well, does it, for our future? And I'm really concerned about that, because we want to have the best services that we possibly can for our local people. And whether we go in with other councils or not, we need to look after residents who live in this area. And if we're not very careful, as Councillor Jones pointed out, we're actually taking democracy away from a load of people and putting very, very few councillors. And they're going to have great difficulty in dealing with all the problems that we actually face as councillors on the district and county. Because I'm sure if you're like me, you get loads of complaints and not just complaints either, but sometimes it's praise, would you believe? But lots of people want to speak to us about all sorts of things. And I am very concerned that in the new authority, if it's going to be a massive one with very few people representing us, that local democracy is going to suffer. However, I will go along with the ideas that have been put forward, but I would like us also to actually say to the government, don't make this just a way of cutting the amount of money that we spend in local government. I think we need as a council to spell that out, because if that's what they're thinking, then our services are going to go right down the drain. Thank you.
Councillor Milton.
A relatively new councillor. I kind of had sat there thinking I'd diligently make some notes and then didn't at all. So just a couple of thoughts from me. Realistically, change is inevitable. That's the one thing that you're not going to discuss. It's not going to happen. Change is inevitable. And this change has been inevitable for some time. It's not just about the incumbent government we have now. Yes, they've speeded up that process, but this change has been indicated for some time, even under previous governments, as the reason it's happened to our neighbours on both sides, whether it be Dorset, Somerset or Cornwall. So it wasn't a case of if this was coming to Devon, it was a case of when. The bit that's a little bit concerning at the moment is the speed of change. Because at the speed that we're attempting to do this, it's going to provide some virtually insurmountable challenges, I think, for both districts and county, especially with that confusion where we stick Plymouth and Torbay and Exeter and everyone vying for their biggest slice of the pie. And the reality is, isn't it, that we potentially, if we're not careful, become an economic backwater. Yeah. Because we're up in one corner, we're a relatively low population. Actually, and the other bit that goes with it, this council is financially quite solvent. You know, we've done quite a lot of investment in economic regeneration, most of it before my time, I must admit, but it's been ongoing. And there would be my concern in a supersized unitary authority that we could easily see asset stripping of what we've got here. Mm-hmm. And we could see that move to support the economic generation in those areas that support the greatest will of the greater political aim. And that's really concerning to me because at that point, how do we represent under that big unitary? And I think Councillor Jones's comment was really out there. How do we get the representation of the concern of some of those rural areas into the areas where the biggest population is going to be? The reality is, biggest populations are going to have the most members on a new unitary authority. As simple as that. They will hold the balance of power. If you looking at the map earlier on and adding up the numbers, if we become a unitary with everything that's in Devon, in reality, there will be considerably more members on that new authority from the likes of Plymouth, Exeter and Torbay than there will actually from all the rest of us put together. So where's the focus of activity likely to be would be my thoughts. So there's something about it tells me if the direction of travel is inevitable anyway, which I think it is, then actually what we've got to do is not sit down in steerage and just wondering where we're going to end up. We need to be sat up on the bridge and saying, this is what we want out of this. This is the representation we want. This is the quality of services in the direction of economic generation. This is the housing situation here. We want to have a fair say in it. So I think whether you're looking at postponement or not, and I've seen the bit of a fiasco that happened in Somerset over the last few years with their move to unitary and having shadow authorities and all sorts of things going on. And I'm not sure whether anybody really knew exactly what was going on or who was doing what. And I think that's borne out by the economic state that Somerset is in now, actually. I would hate to think that we went down this route in Devon and ended up in that same situation, in that we moved towards what was supposed to be a much greater good for the county and find ourselves financially considerably worse off than we were when we started, with less representation. So there is kind of a feeling we've got to be involved with this. I think we have no choice but to support the direction of travel and be engaged with it. I think we do need a good small group within council here that are willing to proactively engage. And I think that we've got to be quite careful that we don't keep trying to find reasons not to. I think we're past that. It's kind of the Canute moment otherwise, isn't it? You're not going to stop what's inevitable. So let's just support this to some extent. I do have my concerns over the deadlines that are put there. And, 2027 isn't actually very far away. It's in 2025 now. It's a very, very short time. Now, I can understand to some extent the reasoning for postponing elections if
if this is going to happen in 2027. But what happens if it doesn't happen in 27 and we postpone county elections? Do we have them then next year, knowing that they're going to be a short-term elected council? Or where do we go with it? So there's kind of a challenge. Are we absolutely certain of these timelines? And I know the paperwork is yet to come out on those precise bits. So we can't really determine it, can we? Until we see a little bit more of what's there. But we have to be aware of what's going on there. So just a few concerns. I think the direction of travel is inevitable. I unfortunately think as well that what we're heading towards will be effectively virtually professional councillors in a unitary authority the size that's there. The people able to do it are only those people that have nothing else to do if they're going to represent their areas. That's the truth. Yeah, or it will effectively become a full-time quasi-political role. So, and that's a concern to some extent, because as Councillor Jones raised, and one or two others, you lose that direct contact with the very people that you were expecting to be serving. So that serving bit, you kind of think disappears. I think the other bit I wanted to bring up as well, and it just sort of running through my mind to try and get my head around some of this, is there's actually two issues, as I understand it here, isn't there? There's the unitary authority, and then there's the strategic authority, and they're not the same. And I think we've got to remember that as well, into where we end up, not just with our unitary authority, but where we end up with our strategic authority and what that will actually mean to us too. So that's an additional bit. I think I've said enough. Thanks.
Yeah, if I could just bring Ken in about the timeline.
And just on that very last point, you're absolutely right. Councillor Lever made the point as well. This is two separate things. There's the strategic authority, which will take the powers under devolution arrangements from central government, and then there's the authorities that sit below that strategic authority, and that's where local government reorganisation comes in. Just in relation to the timelines, if the elections, if government agrees to postpone the elections, then they will be expecting mayoral elections to take place in April 26. And that's what they're setting out. And now my guess is that government won't agree to postpone those elections unless they're satisfied that that's what can be delivered locally. So it is a quick timescale. And then full implementation, I believe, in April 27, but we'll see that when we get the letter from central government. So it is quick.
Councillor Ricky Knight, please.
Yeah, well, fine points by my independent colleague, Councillor Milton there, and also, full respect, Father of the House, Councillor Warden. There you are. That's me being sycophantic. When we first came across this these proposals, I think a lot of us just said to ourselves, fait accompli, going ahead, and everyone's. I don't want to repeat myself, but I inevitably will. I must admit, I'm trying to find a different angle here. Looking at Exeter, the implication is that in this fait accompli is that Labour controlled Exeter, Labour controlled Plymouth, have the ear of government, and therefore whatever we say, bad luck, grow up, get over it, it's politics. And oh, by the way, I'm a first-term district councillor as well, finding my feet. No illusions about how big that task would be at county level. The other implication was that the vote today in Exeter was maybe prompted by there will be a big change in May this year. So looking at Exeter, looking at Plymouth, if Exeter wants to expand, then there is a question here somewhere. Can you be pleased to know? If Exeter plans to expand north into East Devon, as it were, and Plymouth and south to Cambridge, and Plymouth wants to move north and northwest into South Hams, that's going to be extremely unpopular with the people in those other existing districts. And one of the main things we are asking in our proposals, which I totally support, by the way, is that there should be more consultation. One of the dream things, one of the most almost impossible things that any council can do is ascertain the public. Now, my straw poll is that the public aren't really interested, which is a great disappointment, obviously, because we're deeply involved in politics. But I didn't say the great unwashed, but the public really can't understand it, are not interested, get on with it. How are we going to consult? How are Plymouth and Exeter going to consult if they want to expand? And this expansion in turn will limit numbers of the populations of the remaining districts. So I wish I knew the magic way of ascertaining public consultation, ascertaining public opinion, and what can one do with that. Thank you.
I have Councillor Biederman.
I'll be really quick. I think the point I want to make, which has not been made, and I hear the Exeter and Plymouth thing where they're trying to go off on their own and do their own thing. I mean, I hope the government, I know the MPs need to know this point, and I know it has, but it was meant to be a special case. And I don't think I've heard anything that makes Plymouth and Exeter a special case, because at the end of the day, we are one county, one way or another. And I think none of us want to see a massive county. So, we need to probably, like Malcolm said earlier, right at the start, we need some grown-up conversations how we split it up into probably two, whether it's east, west, north, south. We split it into two, but Exeter and Plymouth, they need us and we need them. And I would be very disappointed if the government go back on what they said, that unless it's a special case, it has to be 500,000
growth areas.
Yeah. But I think it'd be disappointing, wouldn't it? I mean, I think we all agree that. And I think I'd finish by, I remember the Leinster, when I first became a district councillor, county councillor, sorry, we had Leinster, and if you had a drain problem, that Leinster knew exactly where to go and sort that out. And I look on this street, I see staff here and here and here and here and all across the council. When we got a problem, we go to our staff and they know exactly where to go, what to do. And this is where I support Peter, what he said, and David, what he said. It's dangerous, very dangerous when you lose that local knowledge to be able to deal with problems at a local level. So I think we have to accept there's going to be change, but it might not necessarily be good, because certainly the day we lost our Leinster, we lost a lot of knowledge of how drainage networks work. And I know over there in that building, there's some tremendous knowledge of how North Devon works. We'll come and go as councillors, but staff, officers, they'll be here and they'll be here well beyond us. And I think it's dangerous if we've got somebody in Exeter, Poulton, Truro, wherever it might be in the end, trying to tell us how our little areas are, because that's what really matters to the public, is what happens in their daily life. So got to accept it, but like as I tried to say, it ain't necessarily going to be great, because it will save pennies and potentially see people lose their jobs and also not get the service they used to. But for me, the biggest point I want to make is, and I know that the MPs will do this, surely if Labour are going to do one thing, they'll keep one promise, is that, a special case is a real special case. I think they were talking about the Isle of Wight to start with, not creating little, pockets in Devon and Cornwall and Cumbria and anywhere else. Thank you, members.
Back to the room, please.
Members, all I can say is I sat throughout the county council meeting today, not said a word, just listening to all the different viewpoints. Tonight, I thought to myself, shall I say something? But this is where I'm elected and I need to say something. What I'm going to say is that government, this will go through, and Councillor Milton, your speech was very on the dot, and the reasons why it's happening and why it shouldn't happen. Peter, Councillor Jones, your synopsis of it all was also good. I think everybody's put valid points over. Exeter, from my point of view, do want to go on their own and infringe on other areas. Plymouth, with the free port next to it, will put an option through and try and use the free port as a special case that they should do and go forward. Cornwall want to do their own thing, and that has been made public in the press. But one thing is for certain, that we need that economic driver. You know, it's no good just putting the rural areas together. We need Exeter. We need those places of economic drive so that we can absolutely get the best deal we can, because that M5 corridor is so important to the economy of an area. And, you know, I wasn't around then. I came the year North Devon Link Road was opened in 1989. And, you know, you remember how long it used to take you to get to Taunton before the A361. You know, I think the economic driver is a must here. And I think what Malcolm Proud was saying earlier about the different sorts of synopses, I think it needs some councillors to come forward who are used to this, who have got some really valid ideas, because this is going to be our one chance. It is going to happen. We're not going to be able to stop it. It is going to happen. So you're better in it than out of it. And the main thing is that I can promise you, after listening to you, you will inform my decisions. Whatever you come up with, I will represent you in Parliament, and I will put I'll put your suggestions forward, and absolutely stand by what you come up with. Because for me, I've always been an advocate, and Dan Turton, I told you this, you know, town and parish councils are so vital because they're at the coalface of the community. Districts is another layer where we're at the coalface. And Prue, I remember you, when you first come to this council and you were on county, you were elected, and you went, actually, I like district council because I find that I get involved a bit more and things are explained more. Now you've got more experience, that might be different. But what I'm trying to say is, because there's more of us, the more we can do for the community. So all I'll say this evening is I've listened, I've taken note of everything that you've said, and I think we have got to stick together. No party political cross-party shenanigans. We all need to stick together for the best of North Devon, because we're here to represent North Devon and we want the best. And I'll tell you why, because I was in a meeting just an hour before coming here. I was at an academy trust, and they were telling me that school children in different parts of this of the country get funded a lot more money than they do. For example, £3,500 per primary school pupil a year in North Devon, compared to somewhere where it's nearly 5,000 per pupil. The formula is wrong. So whatever happens, we've always got to bear in mind there's miraculously not going to be any more money anywhere in the country. You know, they all use that Barnett formula. At the end of the day, we've got to make sure we get the best for North Devon. So let's stick together. Let's think of our residents, and let's do the best for North Devon. And however we get carved up, we need to make sure that we all put that value point across. So we're an area across boundaries to make up the magic figures that are needed for the best of North Devon. But all I'll say is I will be listening to you closely. I'll keep in contact with everybody. Please let me know, and I'll try and represent you the best I can in Parliament.
Caroline Newman.
I think I'll leave it, actually.
Okay.
I don't think I can follow that.
Councillor Tops.
I think we're all making very similar noises about it being very worth engaging with this, because it's going to happen. But I think maybe we need to think about going a little bit further with that and see it as an opportunity, because whenever change does come, it does always present opportunities. And clearly there are certain parties within local government in Devon already who are seeing it as an opportunity in Exeter, who are trying to potentially get a bigger chunk of pie, same in Plymouth. And not to be glib about it, but when Councillor Crabb mentioned earlier, sort of, you know, if they do go off on their own, that leaves Barnstable as the capital of North Devon. Yeah, is that a bad thing? Potentially, could we harness that? Could we be involved in the debate and the discussion and actually try and use it as an opportunity and see if we can't improve what is probably not improving, because it's probably the whole exercise is a case of someone in Whitehall knowing the cost of everything and value of nothing. But can we try and make this work to our advantage in any way, shape or form?
Propose an amendment, if that's okay, because I noticed there's a lot of agreement.
Can I just, sorry, before you propose your amendment, I just wanted to say a little bit, if that's okay. What I wanted to add, which is not very much at all, is what I want to see from any authority is what happened this afternoon with me. I had a elderly gentleman who is a resident who lives not very far from me, and he said to me, Councillor Walker, I've had a bit of a problem. My freeze has been turned off by my granddaughter by mistake. And he says, I don't know what to do with the contents of it. And I thought, well, I'm not 100% sure. As much as he can, put it in the green waste, which we're superb at collecting. And so I phoned up a very good member of staff here and said, what should he do with what he can't get in his green waste bin? And I got an immediate answer. And I could phone him back again and say, this is what you need to do. Oh, thank you, Councillor Walker, that's great. That was done in about 10 minutes. And I would hate to think of that gentleman who lives around the corner from me having to speak to somebody who didn't have the time to get back to him in a reasonable, sensible amount of time. And that is what I want to see from any new authority, is that people get the service that they deserve. Okay, so Councillor Bell, you wanted to bring them in.
Thank you. That's all right. I would like to bring an amendment, if that's okay, to what we're proposing tonight. Since everyone seems to be agreeing, I do want to say something that might be controversial, everyone may hate me, but it's inspired slightly by what Councillor Boland said last night, as well as what Councillor Jones and Milton have said today. We're going to be having elections. I mean, whether they're in 2025 or 2026, elections happen. We have a deficit in North Devon, as well as other parts of the county, I know. And I've said this before, but 75% of our parish councils and district and our town councils are not elected. And we have one district council seat that's not elected either. That's a real shame. And part of it is there's a lack of engagement in the community with the parish and town process. And they are the most exciting parts, because, you know, we talk about the fact that we're out dealing with freezers, but actually it's the parish councillors and the town councillors that see every single day the people in there, even better than what we do when we're trying quite hard. I would like to propose that as part of this, we know that elections are going to be coming, and I know this will take an act of parliament in order to put it through, but I think we can make the suggestion that when it comes to the next lot of elections, we ensure that parish and town elections are concordant, or they tie in with whatever elections come for whatever unitary authority. We need to be moving in that direction, because district elections, parish elections, they happen at the same time. Good, people get to tick a couple of extra pieces of paper, but I think we need to ensure that, because currently whatever we're proposing here is going to put those two things out of sync, as we see with county and parish elections at the moment, and that's going to be a permanent thing. And without the district election, we're going to have even less impetus going into the parish councils and the town councils, and we could see 75% unelected. We could see that go up to 90%, and there'd be in Braunton and the surrounding areas, only one seat is contested, and it's only because one extra person put their name down. That's a real shame. I think we just need to make sure that these things are tied together. I'd like to propose that as a really long, wordy amendment that Bev will turn into some sort of magic.
Well, Chair, we don't have a mover and seconder for any other. I think Councillor Bushell moved it, but I'm not sure it was seconded. And I think he moved. Well, I think he moved the recommendations on the paper that was in front of you. I think that's now been seconded by Councillor Biederman.
The paper in front of us. Could you just remind me where I can find a paper in front of us?
It was on the screen, so we can bring that up again. Question I'd ask, I suppose, is whether the mover of that motion and the seconder want to take on board the amendment, in which case that can become part of the overall motion.
Part of that motion was also Councillor Clayton's wish for there to be a small working group made up, I believe, of all the party groups.
Yeah, that's fine. That will happen anyway. But if you want to include that as part of that motion, that's fine.
No disrespect, Graham. I think, like I said, the whole point of having a working group. Sorry. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Graham. I think the whole point of the working groups was to get into the bits of detail and things like that. Because the chances are the next parish and district elections will be 2027. It's on the timeline anyway. So I think personally, I would leave. I think the motion as is, why I'm willing to second it, is perfect, and it gives cross-party groups to be able to come together, work it up, and it might well be that they want to make some comment on because you're right, it'd be a complete waste of money if we're having extra elections and different things. Personally, I'd rather don't want to tie that group before they start personally, but that.
Just through the chair, I'm just mindful that it does require an act of parliament, I believe, to move the elections. And that's why I think that this should be something that we are thinking about at an early stage to ensure that we have parish and town elections brought in, because it's going to be, it feels like it should be very simple just to say we'll have them on this day, but actually I think it's quite complicated. And I think that's why we should be addressing it early doors.
If I may say, I mean, if we're talking about making sure that the parish elections are coterminous with the elections or any new unitary authority that comes into being, then the order that creates that new unitary authority will deal with the electoral arrangements. So there'll be plenty of time to make those representations as we go through the process. So, going back to what Councillor Biederman says, if you want to keep your powder dry on that aspect, there will still be plenty of opportunity to make representations in relation to the new unitary, whatever form it takes.
Yeah. You happy with that, Councillor?
I was just, Councillor Biederman, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Jones.
I'd like to make an amendment just for transparency and clarity that this working group that's put forward should not include county councillors.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Crabb, have his hand up first.
Very briefly, and there'll be other county councillors in the room that will be in the same boat as me. If that is a single resolution, I mean, there's been a fair bit of sense talked here tonight, which God, I really would Councillor Berrigan. But there's been a fair bit of sense talked here tonight. But there are some of us that have actually gone out of the way today to vote on two of these occasions, completely opposite to what's on the screen. Therefore, it makes something of a nonsense if I was to put my hand up for this tonight. So I'm happy for most of this, but if we can split the motion down, if you're happy with that, or I'll abstain or vote against, whatever. But I mean, the reason being is I'm in a position, and other people in the room are as well, where we've said exactly opposite to some of that in about 8 hours ago.
You're dual hatted, so you can switch hats.
What's the 1 second?
I don't think it works like that.
Okay, Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point. I'm interested that the idea of a working group. I'm almost surprised that it has to be as a motion passed by council for us to set up a working group. Is that normal? Is it not normal?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it seems very sensible to get a bunch of people to talk about all this sort of stuff. But I think that the idea that double hatters actually are not able to represent the district is actually rather insulting. And I think the idea of just being able to decide, actually, there's a bunch of you here who aren't allowed to be on that. It might be that it's useful to have someone who's got that other knowledge as well. I am not putting myself forward for this at this point, let me just point out. But in terms of the principle of saying, well, we can have that lot, but we're not going to have that lot, I think it undermines our integrity, and I'm not very happy with that suggestion.
I would also like to point out that we did have already said that county councillors should be involved in this procedure by the very nature of the fact that they are allowed to take part in the debate and vote this evening. Yeah, Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair. I think we should move on now and get to a vote on this. There's two things as far as I'm concerned. There is this here. I'll take on board what Councillor Crabb has said, but that's politics. This is for this council to decide whether they agree with those things. I hope that the council will, even though there might be abstentions or people voting against. The second thing is, which we don't have to go through, as Councillor Caroline Lever said, to have a motion to adopt this working party that Ken and myself have suggested. I've suggested we have 6 initially, 2 from each group. I don't think we should say county councillors are not to sit on this. This is not party politics. This is about getting the best for North Devon as far as possible and coming up with the best suggestions for possible unitaries that we think would benefit, because the big ironic thing about all this, we talk about devolution. This is not devolution. We've had heard about it, but it's not devolution, because what the strategic authority will do and what possible unitaries will do is take power not from the local people, give it to the top. There'll be a few people now at the top who's going to decide our futures. And that's not devolution. Devolution, in my mind, would be going down to the parish and town council and giving them a lot more. That ain't on the agenda, I'm afraid, of this Labour government. No matter how we can scream and shout, but it's not going to change things, as people have said tonight. There's inevitability about what's going to happen. So let's go and try and make the best we can and have a working party made up of not party politics, but people who are going to speak up for North Devon and get the best deal we possibly can, working with other regions such as, yes, it might have to go with Bideford and things like that. But I mean, that's what we need to do, really. We need to get the best thing forward. But I think we need to vote on this, get it out of the way. We're strongly in favour of it. Send a letter to the Minister, McMahon in Oldham, and tell him what we think about it. Hopefully the elections will go ahead in 2025. But the main thing is let's sit down together and get things moving as soon as we can after this and get this out.
Yes.
Back to move.
If we have no more questions or comments, I would like to move to the vote.
Good.
So the resolution.
Can I request that we do a recorded vote, a roll call?
Yeah. So all in favour of a recorded vote.
Can I please amend to reverse the order? And actually, it isn't simply that I'm simply being first, but actually, councillors York and I'll get this wrong now. Councillor York is always last, and honestly, it reduces her democratic involvement by the fact that it's already sorted. Go back. If Bev's okay with it, could we please amend to go backwards?
Mr. Chairman, can I just comment on that? Because whichever order you do it in, you're going to end up with somebody at the end. Please ask that we keep this simple for the officers. Run through it in alphabetical order in the way that we normally do.
Right. Sorry, can I have quiet, please? So
Was there more than half in favour of?
right, can I have another show of hands in favour of a recorded vote, please?
I think that's more than half.
Yeah. Okay, so Bev, if you could take the vote please on the resolution as is on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell?
Yes.
Against, please.
Councillor Wiedemann?
For.
Councillor Bishop?
For.
Councillor Bushell?
For.
Councillor Khan?
4.
Councillor Clayton?
4.
Councillor Crabb?
Abstain.
Councillor Hayward Booth?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
Councillor David Knight?
4.
Councillor Ricky Knight?
4.
Councillor Lane?
4.
Councillor Caroline Lever? 4. Councillor Peter Lever?
4.
Councillor Leatherby?
4.
Councillor Maddox?
4.
Councillor Maskell?
Abstain.
Councillor Milton?
4.
Councillor Norman?
4.
Councillor Orange? 4. Councillor Petrinos?
4.
Councillor Prowse?
4.
Councillor Quinn?
4.
Councillor Room?
4.
Councillor Tops?
4.
Councillor Turton?
4.
Councillor Walker?
4.
Councillor Whitehead?
4.
Councillor Wilkinson?
4.
Councillor Williams?
4.
Councillor Wilson?
4.
Councillor Warden?
4.
And Councillor York?
Sorry?
Councillor.
4.
We do that again. We Councillor York.
So, Chair, that's 31 voted for. So it's 31 councillors voted for, 0 against, and 2 abstained.
Thank you very much, members. That we have a clear steer from our members as to our way forward on this. Thank you.
Not at the moment.
Now formally closed.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.